he's busy with working, and sometimes we don't see him that often, so it's kind of nice to have him back. Yeah, it feels good. Always feels good to be back in church. Yeah. Okay, so thank you all for coming too. It's a beautiful, beautiful day with you all being here. Reverend Anthony was born and raised in Akron, Ohio, where he spent 46 of his life. At the age of 3, he was communicating with loved ones who had transitioned to spirit world. His work with mediumship began there and continues to this day. At the age of 11, Reverend Anthony developed privately with Christ and his guiding influences. By the age of 15, Anthony was working psychic fairs, doing readings. His work continued throughout his life, and in 2010, completed a 4-year program in spiritualist ministry and was ordained at the First Spiritualist Church in Kent, Ohio. After ordination, he began conducting healing and mediumship circles. In 2011, Reverend Anthony was asked by his guides to relocate to San Diego to fulfill his private ministry with mediumship, healing services, teaching, which he continues to serve today as self-employed spiritualist minister. Reverend Anthony has now dedicated his life to being in loving service to Christ and all his team of guiding influences. Reverend Anthony, when not working, spends time in prayer, meditation, and deep contemplation with his guides. Reverend Anthony offers mediumship readings with art in tarot and oracle cards, energy healing, and tuning fork services. One of Reverend Anthony's greatest passion is teaching mediumship and development and reading modality and healing services. So please let us give Reverend Anthony a warm welcome.
Thank you for being here today. I'm very excited to speak to all of you today. Master Alexander is partially author of this talk today. Usually my talks are completely channeled by Spirit, word for word. But he gets to do the opening and he gets to do the conclusion. So he got to take a rest today, so I was glad he didn't have to work so hard today. Master Alexander chose this talk for each of you, and it's about our creed. Most spiritualists don't think or understand that we have a creed. Some churches have creeds. We do have a creed. Our creed is it's the Declaration of Principles. So my talk today is in the body of my talk is from the National Spiritualist Association of Churches. Alexander's opening, he says, I, Master Alexander, am a master teacher in spirit of spiritualism and metaphysicism, and bring this material to each of you today based both on my perspective in spirit and facts on earth. In the experience of spiritualism. Its creed, which in spiritualism is referred to as the Declaration of Principles. we will proceed with those principles, and then at the end, he will come back with his conclusion. Once again, all this material was taken factually from the National Spiritualist Association of Churches. Alexander wanted me to start today with the history of our principles. Principle 1 through 6 was adopted in Chicago, Illinois in 1899. Principles 7 and 8 were adopted in Rochester, New York in 1909. Principle 9 was adopted in St. Louis, Missouri in 1944. Principle 9 was revised in Oklahoma City in 1983. Principle 9 was re-revised in Westfield, New Jersey in 1998. Principle 8 was then revised in Rochester, New York in 2001. Principle 6 was revised in, I hope I say this right, Ronkonkoma, New York in 2004 was the last update to our principles. I'm going to read you the actual principles. I'm going to read you a simpler version and then the interpretation. And I find this very interesting because back in Ohio, where I took my courses for spiritualism, we read the 9 principles during each church service as a part of our church service to remind us of, as spiritualists, why were we there? Why were we here? Some of these may be familiar to you, and some of them may be completely unknown to you. The first principle is we believe in infinite intelligence. The second principle, we believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. The third principle, we affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therein constitutes true religion. The fourth principle, we affirm that the existence and personal identity of the individual continue after the change called death. The fifth principle, we affirm that communication with the so-called dead is a fact, scientifically proven by the phenomena of spiritualism. We believe that the highest mortality is contained in the golden rule, do unto others as you have them do unto you. The seventh principle, we affirm the moral responsibility of individuals and that we make our own happiness or unhappiness. As we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. The eighth principle says, we affirm that the doorway to reformation is never closed against any soul, here or hereafter. The ninth principle, we affirm that the precepts of prophecy and healing are divine attributes proven through mediumship. Principle 9 is why we have a weekly healing service here. at First Christian Spiritualist Church. All the principles are very important, but this is one of the most important. Alexander also asked me to give you the simplified version of the 9 principles, sort of made better to understand as years went forward. The first principle in simplified form is we believe in God. The second, we believe that God is expressed through all nature. The third, true religion is living in obedience to nature's laws. Principle 4, we never die. Principle 5, spiritualism proves that we can talk with people in the spirit world. The 6th, be kind, do good, and others will do likewise. The 7th, we bring unhappiness to ourselves by the errors we make, and we will be happy if we obey the laws of life. The 8th, every day is a new beginning. And the 9th, prophecy and healing are expressions of God. Now, Joseph Whitwell, 3rd NSAC president, included in this information the interpretation of our principles. So the first, by this we express our belief in a supreme impersonal power, everywhere present, manifesting as life through all forms of organized matter. Called by some God, called by others Spirit, and by some spiritualists infinite intelligence. The second interpretation of this second principle. In this manner, we express our belief in the immanence of spirit, and that all forms of life are manifestations of spirit or infinite intelligence. And thus, all people are children of God. Interpretation of the third principle. A correct understanding of the laws of nature on the physical, mental, and spiritual planes of life, and living in accordance therein, will unfold the highest aspirations and attributes of one's soul, which is the correct function of true religion. The fourth interpretation was provided by Lillian Whitting. And this is a quote from her of the interpretation of the fourth principle. Life here and life hereafter is all one life whose community of consciousness is unbroken by that mere change in form whose process we call death. Interpretation of the fifth principle. Spirit communication has been in evidence in all ages of the world and is amply recorded in both sacred and profane literature of all ages. Orthodoxy has accepted these manifestations and has interpreted them in dogma and creed in terms of the supernatural. Spiritualism accepts and recognizes these manifestations and interprets them in the understanding and light of natural law. Interpretation of the sixth principle. This precept we believe to be true. It points the way to harmony, peace, and happiness. Wherever tried, it has been proven successful, and when fully understood and practiced, will bring peace and happiness to man on earth. Interpretation of the seventh principle. People themselves are responsible for the welfare of the world in which they live. For its welfare or its misery, for its happiness or unhappiness. And if they are to obtain heaven upon earth, they must learn to make that heaven for themselves and for others. Individually, all are responsible for their own spiritual growth and welfare. Wrongdoing must be outgrown and overcome. Virtue and love of good must take their place. Spiritual growth and achievement must be attained by aspiration and personal striving. Vicarious atonement has no place in the philosophy of spiritualism. Each one must carry his own cross to Calvary's heights in the overcoming of wrongdoing and replacing them with the right. Interpretation of the eighth principle. We discard entirely the terrible wrong and illogical teachings of eternal damnation, and in place thereof, we accept the present for consideration of thinking people, the thought of the continuity of life beyond the change called death. A natural life where the opportunity for growth and progress to better, higher and more spiritual conditions are open to all. Even as they are here on earth, on the earth plane of life, we accept no such teaching as hell, fire, or brimstone. But we do teach wrongdoing will necessarily bring remorse and suffering that would be difficult to describe in words, and which can only be relieved by the individual's own efforts, if not here, then in the hereafter. If we make our own lives better while here, in the present and on earth, with our neighbors, family, and friends. If we create a happier and loving environment, we shall unfold the happiness of heaven on earth, which we shall carry with us into the spirit world. The ninth interpretation. We thus affirm our belief in the acceptance of the truths and assertions that prophecy and mediumship are not unique, nor of recent occurrence alone, but they are universal, everlasting, and have been witnessed and observed in all ages of the world. Bear with me a moment, I'm so sorry. So there you have it. We have a creed. We have principles. And they really are expressed each time we come here. We have service. We have healing service with anyone interested. We have church service, which we're doing now, lecture service. We get messages. And we're here to be channels and vessels to help and develop other people to do the same thing. I just looked at several of you and you know who I'm looking at. So of course Alexander has to misbehave and hide my conclusion. He's such a rascal. Loves to mess with me. This conclusion of this talk is from Master Alexander. These principles and understandings of each of these should be the true reason all of you are here today. These principles should be carried out to everyone's best ability so that the earth can become and remain all that God intended it to be. A place of love, a place of light, a place of kindness, a place of compassion, a place of truth, and in God's highest energy manifesting in and through everyone at every moment of each day and night. This talk is designed to align us, to align as many possible with these principles so that our earth can be reflected through all of these principles, lived to the best of humans' abilities. Master Alexander thanks you for listening to his talk today.